welcome to Too Fond of Books. My name is Janelle, and this is another weekly wrap-up for March Mystery Madness. This is already the wrap-up for week number 3. Can you even believe it? This month is going by so fast, but I have some great books to talk about, some interesting books to talk about. But before I get into what I read last week, I need to show you the book that fit yesterday's 2x2 mystery game. I needed to find a mystery after 1970 with an amateur sleuth. So I went to the cart where I've been choosing my books. So I haven't read this one yet, but it's All the Queen's Men by S.J. Bennett. This is the second in the Her Majesty the Queen Investigates series. I really enjoyed the first one, The Windsor Knot. So I am excited to get into this one and see what the author has for us this time around. This was published very recently and it's set in 2016. So it counts, and it definitely has an amateur sleuth because the queen is the sleuth in these books. So that's what I have for the game today. Stay tuned to the end of this video when we will play another round in the 2x2 mystery game. Okay, let's start off with The Christie Affair by Nina de Gramont. I've been hearing a lot about this book. This is brand new, out this year, 2022, which is how it fits for March Mystery Madness. Although I have to say it's probably more historical fiction than historical mystery, but there is mystery in it, so I think that it counts. This is a story about what took place during those 11 days when Agatha Christie went missing. What makes this one interesting and different from the others, because there have been a lot of books about those 11 days. This one is told from the perspective of Nancy, who is the woman that Archie Christie is having an affair with, which you know, leads to him asking for Agatha Christie for a divorce, which leads to her disappearance. So that's all I'm going to say for the non-spoilery part, but I have stuff I want to say about this book, so I'm about to get spoilery. If you haven't read this one yet and you want to skip ahead until you don't see spoiler on the screen anymore, but yeah, I'm just going to get into it because I have some things I need to say about this book. First of all, this book was not the book for me. This did not work for me. Pretty much on any level. I did not like this book. I did not like the way that the characters were portrayed. I didn't really like how the story was told. It didn't work for me. Okay, so first of all, it's told in the first person from the perspective of Nan, and that is fine. If that's the choice that the author makes, that's fine. But then I think the author realized that she was getting herself into a bit of a knot because she could only tell things from the first person perspective of Nan, and she needed other scenes where Nan wasn't there. And so she wrote those scenes into the story still from the first person of Nan, and that's where it all fell apart for me. I did not like that at all. So, for example, she tells the scene where Archie comes home. It's him and Agatha, and it's when he is finally going to tell Agatha that he wants a divorce. Nan is not in that scene, but it's told from the first person perspective. So, obviously, then it's either she's telling it how Archie told it to her, which doesn't work, that's hearsay, or she's just guessing how it went. In that case, like, so basically what we have here is just like a completely unreliable narrator. And it just did not work. It just did not work for me. And so what's interesting is the author even addresses it. So on page 50, this is the quote: "You may well wonder if you can believe what I tell you about things that occurred when I myself was not present." Yes, I can, Nan. I did have those questions myself. And then like she goes on into great detail explaining away how it works, and it didn't work for me. She says, this is as reliable an account as you can ever hope to receive. Think for a moment. Don't you know about events that pertain to you but which you didn't witness? Don't you find yourself sometimes recounting them? There's plenty we remember that we never saw with our own eyes or lived with our own bodies. It's a simple matter of weaving together what we know, what we've been told, and what we imagine. No, that didn't work for me. And then what also didn't work for me is that she's recounting the story that Archie told her later of how the evening went. And then she said, but I don't think that that's true. Here's how I think it went. And then she told, you know, the story. And then she continues on with this first person perspective of telling the story. And then I got thoroughly confused of, are we continuing with what Archie told her, or are we continuing with what she imagines happened? So that part did not work for me either. The other thing that I couldn't figure out was the author uses the real names of Agatha Christie, Archie Christie. The name of the house that they lived in at the time was called Styles. They had a dog called Peter. All of that is true. But then she gives the name of Archie's mistress as Nan O'Day, when Archie's mistress was actually called Nancy something else, Nancy Neal. So she changes the name of Archie's mistress. Okay, but then she also changes the name of their daughter, of Rosamond, who is Archie and Agatha Christie's daughter. She changes her name. She changes the name of the hotel where Agatha Christie is discovered. In real life, that's the Hydro Hotel in Harrogate, and she has it as the Belfort Hotel. So, and in her story, those things make sense because she completely is playing around with the truth and what happened in those stories. But in my mind, like, how can you have like the real names of people and places for real events and then change other people's names that were real people? Like, yeah, that part that part didn't work for me either. She changed the name of Agatha Christie's personal secretary, who was also a governess to Rosalind. Her real name is Charlotte, or Carlotta, or Carlo. In the book, she's called Honoria for some reason. Yeah, I just didn't get that at all. And then there were some nods to Agatha Christie characters, which I appreciated. So she had a Mrs. Race in the story, which is a nod to Colonel Race. She had a Mrs. Ackroyd, which is a nod to Roger Ackroyd. An Armstrong and a Marston, which are characters from And Then There Were None. She also had, and this was interesting to me, a Noel and Ursula Owen, and that's the name of the couple that she gave to the couple that Archie and Nan spent the weekend with when Agatha Christie disappears. And Noel and Ursula Owen, that's UN Owen, which is a name from And Then There Were None. So yeah, I find that very interesting. She also has the name, like the accounts that we know of the search for Agatha Christie. That part is also correct. Anyway, I think I'm done with ranting about this book. In the end, this just wasn't the book for me. Okay, and then I did a last-minute buddy read with Carolyn from Carolyn's Reading Ramblings. We had read the first one in this series, and so the Whitstable Pearl series, and we decided just at the last minute to read the second one in the series, so this totally fits for the theme for March Mystery Madness because it's the second book in the series. This is Murder on Sea by Julie Wassmer. This is set in Whitstable, and our main character is Pearl Nolan, who runs a very famous seafood restaurant there, and she's also just recently started a detective agency. And this one takes place just before Christmas, and she's agreed to not take on any new cases and just prepare for the Christmas season. Her son's coming home, and she's, you know, all excited about Christmas. But then she finds out that there are these poison pen Christmas cards that are being sent to people that she knows in the town. And then there is a murder at a Christmas event. Everybody's at like the town hall or something for this event, and there's a murder. And this was great. I really did enjoy this one. Her friend DCI Mike McGuire is involved again, but interestingly enough, he's not allowed to lead the case because he's a witness to the murder. He was at the town hall for that event, so that added an interesting little twist to the story. This is a great series, and I'm excited to keep going with the third one. And then I read Death at Gallows Green by Robin Paige. This is the second in the series, the Victorian Charles Sheridan series. This is also from my gift your shelf pile. So I don't know if I've mentioned this or not, but I did pictures of all of them on Instagram. I did this gift your shelf thing in December. I had Aaron choose books off the shelves for me, and he wrapped them up, and I unwrapped one every day in December. It was just a really fun way to, you know, kind of remind yourself of the books that you have unread on your shelves and then read them. And so this is one of those. This is the second, like I said, in the series, so that it totally fits for March Mystery Madness. This is a really fun series. I really enjoyed this one. Its main character is Catherine Ardley, who is an American who now lives in England. It's in Essex, I think. She's inherited this the ancestral home, Bishop's Keep, and she has met Sir Charles Sheridan, who is an interesting character. He was knighted because of his work for science, and he also has a great interest in photography, and so I love that part of the story because I do too, and so that part's interesting. And in this one, she's at a house party and she meets Beatrix Potter, which is really fun. And which is also hilarious because Robin Paige is a husband-wife writing team. The wife is Susan Whitting Albert. And a few years after this book, she started a cozy mystery series featuring Beatrix Potter. So I wonder if this book was kind of like the impetus for that series. I think that's interesting. I also finished my reread of Murder in Old Bombay by Nev March. I listened to it this time on audio, and the narrator was Vikas Adam, and he was fantastic. He was a great narrator. I loved doing my reread this way on audio. I love this book, and I'm so excited that there's another one coming out in the series this summer. I'm really looking forward to it. This takes place in 1892 in Bombay, and our main character is Captain Jim Agnihotri, and he wakes up in hospital. He's been injured as a soldier, and he sees a report in the newspaper about two women who fell from the bell tower at the university, and he gets really interested. From one line, the husband of one of the women says, oh shoot, what does he say now? He says, "They are gone, but I remain." And that one line just really grabs the attention of Jim, and so he approaches the family and ends up investigating. And so you get this great mystery, but you also get this great, there's adventure and romance. He goes on all of these side adventures, and I love the side characters. I just really, really, really enjoy this story. And then I read Funeral of Figaro by Ellis Peters. This was also on my gift your shelf pile, so that's fantastic. And it fits for March Mystery Madness because there's two F's in the title, and Ellis Peters, also she has double L's in her first name, so it totally fits. This one was written in 1962, and this was just a really fun mystery. It's set in an opera house just outside of London, owned by Johnny. And during the war, Johnny he was in the Navy during the war, and he had this ship. And a lot of what he did was bringing people out of France and Germany and other areas, endangered people, saving them and bringing them out. And so everybody, not everybody, but a lot of the people at the opera house are connected to him because of that. So the crew at the house, they're all people who were on his ship. And and the ship at one point was heavily damaged and went down. So many of these men are injured or damaged in some way, and so they work for him at the opera house, which is really cool. His daughter is part of the opera company. Her name is Hero, and there's another woman who is part of the opera company, and she's someone that he saved. She was being sent to Ravensbrück, and he actually saved her from the train. So that part is just a really interesting part of the story. And then they are putting on the opera Marriage of Figaro, and they have to get a new Figaro last minute because their Figaro has died in a plane crash. And so they are really excited to be able to get Mark Chartreux, who is a famous opera singer, and he agrees to come and play Figaro. But when he arrives, there's a lot of tension suddenly amongst the cast and crew, and then he is murdered on stage during the opening night of the Marriage of Figaro. This one was great. I really did enjoy this one, and I can totally see myself rereading it. And then I read The 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. This was one of the books recommended to me in my 12 challenge. I asked 12 friends to recommend a book, and I'm reading one each month. And my book for March was The 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. This was recommended to me by Carolyn from Carolyn's Reading Ramblings. So thank you, Carolyn, for recommending this book to me. It was a wild, wild ride. A lot of people have already read this book. I'm a little bit late to the game. But basically, it's 1920s house party, but you have Aidan wakes up every day in the body of a different person, and he has 8 days to solve the mystery of who killed Evelyn Hardcastle. That's kind of like the brief synopsis. Now, I have some things I need to say about this book, so I'm going to go spoilery here. I'm going to put spoiler across the screen. If you haven't read this book, then fast forward until you don't see spoiler anymore, because I need to talk about the frame for this story. So yeah, I'm just going to dive right into it. It's described on the front as Agatha Christie meets Groundhog Day, but there's another great description on the back. It says, pop your favorite Agatha Christie whodunit into a blender with a scoop of Downton Abbey, a dash of Quantum Leap, and a liberal sprinkling of Groundhog Day, and you'll get this unique murder mystery, which was a great description. I giggled when I read that. I loved Quantum Leap. I watched that. That was on TV when I was like a teenager. Boy, did I love that show. Anyways, and in that show, he leaps into other people's bodies in other time periods. It was fascinating. I thought it was great. Anyways, so this book, I was like trying to figure out what is going on, and I was reading it as a whodunit, right? Like trying to solve the mystery of who kills Evelyn Hardcastle, whereas the main character in this book spends the majority of his time trying to prevent the murder of Evelyn Hardcastle, and trying to figure out what's going on, which I guess makes sense. If you're that person, that motivation makes sense. Anyways, I get to the part where it's revealed that it's a prison. The house that they're in for this house party is called Blackheath. Blackheath is a prison. And I remember I got to that part, that big reveal, and I actually said it out loud. I was like, what? That's what's going on here? That this is a prison? What? But then I remember also thinking, well, at least it's not hell. Because I remember reading about 100 pages earlier thinking to myself, this better not be hell. He better not be in hell. That's the big twist of this story. So at least it wasn't that. But then it doesn't make sense to me. Okay, so if this is the world that you're in, this turned into a huge discussion with Aaron about how these stories work and whether or not this story worked. So with this type of a story of reliving an experience over and over again, or however you want to say it, the author either needs to give the reader just enough information for the reader to accept the world that they're in and go with it, or there needs to be a full explanation of everything. Those are the only two ways that I think that it really works. And so a perfect example, Aaron gave me this, and I think this is great. So a perfect example of this is a spectrum, right? So on one side you have Groundhog Day, where you really get zero information about what's going on, how that world works. You just accept that he keeps reliving the same day, and the viewer in this case just accepts that and goes with it, and you enjoy the movie, right? So you get zero information about why it's happening, and that works for Groundhog Day. And then a little further along the spectrum, let's say about the middle, you get Back to the Future, right? And in Back to the Future, you get this just enough information for the viewer to accept the world and then enjoy the movie. And in that case, it's the flux capacitor, right? We get no information about the flux capacitor or how it works. You just know that he travels because of the flux capacitor, and you accept that as a viewer and just go with it, and then you enjoy the movie. On the other end of the spectrum is a movie called Edge of Tomorrow, which I've never seen, but Aaron has. And he says that's a case of a complex explanation, but complete enough for the viewer to buy into the logic of the story. So on the other side of the spectrum, you get a complete explanation, a complex explanation that has complete enough information for the viewer to buy into the story. So I hope that spectrum makes sense to you. This book takes place somewhere between Back to the Future and The Edge of Tomorrow. And because of that, it's unsatisfying. There's not enough of an explanation. He's too far from not giving, just giving the reader just enough information to enjoy the story, or no information at all. He's too far from there, and he's not close enough to a complex explanation, but complete enough info for the viewer or the reader. And I think that's why this book just didn't quite work for me. The theme of this book is interesting. The theme is all about rehabilitation and whether or not a person can change. And that part is really interesting, is a really interesting theme in the story. So an example of the unsatisfactory nature of the story, in that he gives too much but not enough information, is the ending. So in the very end, they've learned that it's a prison, that Aiden is a prisoner and Anna is a prisoner, and that Anna is sentenced to relive the same day over and over again, whereas Aiden, because he's not actually a prisoner, he can live he gets his 8 days in order to solve the mystery. And then whoever solves the mystery, whoever reveals the killer of Evelyn Hardcastle, is allowed out. So even Anna or Daniel, if they solve that, they're allowed out. But because they're only given 1 day, it's kind of this the wardens or whatever know that they'll never actually solve it, right? But Aiden, because Aiden chose to go into the prison, not as a prisoner, but because he wanted to kill Anna, he was given 8 days. He was given a better shot at actually solving the mystery. But then, at the very end, once we know all of that, they've solved the mystery. Anna reveals who killed Evelyn Hardcastle. They're both allowed to leave, and they're just walking down the road. Well, where are they going? And what world are we in? Because now I have so many more questions. So where exactly is Blackheath? And who is in Blackheath is real? Is it, if the 1920s part of the story is real, so is part of the prison experience like the prison sentence that they have to go back in time to Blackheath and the Hardcastle family, or is it just a scenario like virtual reality? Like, then now I have so many more questions, right? So yeah, I just I don't understand this world now. Like, he didn't explain it enough, because if they're in prison and they're allowed out and they're just walking down the road, where are they going? And is that world real? Because they certainly gave the impression that they've gone back in time, because Aidan's been there for 30 years or something. So I just don't understand the world now. And so I think it would have been better if the author had chosen one or the other, right? Just given just enough information to understand the world and go with it, like the flux capacitor, and then make the bulk of the story about solving the mystery of who killed Evelyn Hardcastle. Or he needs to go to the other end of the spectrum and it's a complex explanation, but there's enough of it for the reader to understand the world. So I feel like he didn't do either one. Anyway, let's chat if you've read this book, because yeah, I ended up with a lot of questions. Okay, briefly, I'll show you what I'm currently reading. I am well into The Breaking Point by Mary Roberts Rinehart, which turns out to be a romantic suspense, not a whodunit. And now that I know that, great, and I'm enjoying the story. I am also reading Double Double by Ellery Queen, which is from 1950. So, whew, this was a longer one, but there was 2 books here that seemed to require a lot more ranting from me. I don't know. If you've read any of these books, let's chat in the comment section down below. And it is time now for the next round of the 2x2 mystery game. Let's dive right into this round of the 2x2 mystery game. Roll number 1. 1. Type of mystery: thriller or whodunit. So whodunits, the majority of cozies are whodunits. It's the type of mystery where it's a puzzle and you're trying to find out who the killer is. A thriller is kind of everything else. So thrillers or some historical mysteries aren't really whodunits, they're more thrillers. So, you know, that kind of thing. Roll number 2. 2 is gender. Male or female detective, thriller or whodunit? Let's find out. 2 gives us a whodunit with a male detective. I can't wait to see what book you find in the comment section down below, and I will see you for another video soon. Bye.